sometimes we need to give our parameters a default value. Here's an example. Let's create a function for calculating the tax. So our function should return a double. We're going to call it calculate tax and give it two parameters, double income and double tax rate. Now here we're going to return income times tax rate. Pretty simple. Now, because we have defined two parameters here, when calling this function or when invoking this function, we have to supply two arguments. However, we can give this parameter a default value of, let's say, 0.2. And with this, when invoking this function, we don't have to supply a value for this parameter. So essentially, it becomes optional. However, if we supply an argument for this parameter, that argument will override this default value right here. Let me show you. So here we're going to call calculate tax. I'm going to pass 10,000 for the income, and I'm not going to pass a value for the tax rate. So 0.2 or 20% will be assumed by default. So we get the result and store it in a double called tax. Now let's print it. So the tax amount is 2,000. Now, if we supply a value for the tax rate, this value, 0.3, is going to override our default value of 0.2. Take a look. So now the tax is $3,000. So this is how parameters with default values work. Now, one thing you need to know about these parameters is that we should always code them after parameters without a default value. For example, if we add another parameter here, let's call that expense, we get a compilation error saying missing default argument on parameter expense. So the compiler is saying that we have not given this parameter a default value, because once we give a parameter a default value, all the subsequent parameters should also have a default value. So here we can give this a default value of 0 and the error will go away. But if we don't want to do this, then we have to put this before the parameter that has a default value. So we're going to put that right here and remove this extra comma. Okay, so parameters with default values should always come after parameters without a default value.